Hello everyone and welcome to this EdTechTeam UK webinar. Each day at 3:30 we're going through a different topic, and today this session's an introduction to Google Classroom. So this session is designed for people who are new to Classroom, and we're going to sort of take you through all the key aspects of using Google Classroom with your class, particularly thinking about distance learning at this point in time. So particularly focusing around some of the tools that might be useful for you if you're thinking about using Classroom as a distance learning tool. I see lots of you already have said hello in the chat on the right hand side, but feel free to, as we go through, ask any questions in the chat, and at various points I'll jump across the chat and answer anything that's coming up that people are asking for. So we're going to take you through a guided tour of Google Classroom just to start with. Just to introduce myself, my name's Andy Caffrey, Google certified trainer, certified innovator, and now I'm one of the trainers here at EdTechTeam here in the UK. I was a teacher. I taught for 15 years as a geography teacher in a secondary school. We heavily used Google Classroom where I worked, and I left teaching around 3 years ago now to move to training full-time. So I'm now a trainer with EdTechTeam full-time. Okay, so let's get on over then, share my screen in and get over into Google Classroom. Add my screen in there and into Google Classroom. So to get to Google Classroom, a couple of different ways to get there. The web address for Google Classroom is just classroom.google.com. So with any Google product, the name of the product.google.com always takes us to that page. Or alternatively, if you're just on the home page, you can press the little waffle button, the little Google Apps picker, and that will give you a display of all the Google tools. And one of them obviously will be Classroom. In the picker, you can move these things around. So if you frequently use Gmail or you use Drive a lot, you can drag those up to the top. You might find, if you've never used Classroom before, that it's right down the list. So obviously I stick Classroom up on my top line here so I can access it quickly. So however you get there, whether you type the web address into the bar, whether you go through the picker and press Classroom, you'll land on a page that looks like this. And there's a couple of versions. You might land on a page where your classes are there, or you might land on a blank page. And if you've never been to Classroom before, it'll ask you the question, are you a teacher or are you a student? Now, it sounds logical that you need to select teacher. Teachers have the power to share to create classes, and students don't. That's the only difference. When you select teacher, Google doesn't instantly give you teacher powers. So it takes around 5 to 10 minutes before you can create a classroom. So if you happen to be landing on it first time, pressing teacher and then wondering why you can't create a class, give it 5 or 10 minutes, and then that system will kick in and give you access to create classrooms. So let's presume I didn't have any classrooms here. We're going to go from the start. We wanted to create a Google Classroom. So pressing the plus button and pressing create class. So it's the plus top right and then create class to make a new Google Classroom. And this box comes up. Now the only required thing is the name of the class. So I'm going to create a maths class today. All these other sections are optional. It's entirely up to you whether you use them or not. It might be helpful for students, but I'm going to put in, maybe I'll teach in room E7. Oh, teaching, the subject is maths. I teach in room E7. So you can add a bit more detail if you like. It's entirely up to you what you use those for, but it's your choice how much of that you fill in. And then press create. And then we give it a short amount of time while Google goes away and creates the classroom. Hello to everyone watching. Let's have a quick look at this chat. Hello to Mrs. Burrell's Science Channel's in, and Claire Dexter from CRA. Quite a few. Sam from CRA, a few CRA people in. Greenacres School. Hello to them. Wellspring, a few people in from those as well. So hello to all those people watching. That filled the time nicely. Google has now created my Google Classroom, which is this area here. And Google Classroom, effectively at the top, has 4 pages: stream, classwork, people, and grades. And I see those 4 pages because I'm the class teacher. This is the stream page, and students have a stream page too. The stream page is designed really based off a social media sort of platform. And effectively, the posts go back in time. So I can leave a post here to my class. So I can say, hello, class, and post that into my classroom, and that message therefore appears at the top of the stream. I can then leave another post. Maybe I want to leave a post to say welcome to my class as a separate thing and post that in. And so now my stream is starting to fill up with posts, just me posting so far. I'm the only person in this classroom. One of the tips I would say for Google Classroom is if you've got students posting in there as well, things can move down this page quite quickly. So with these three dots here, this very small snowman, you can press that button, and one of the options here, as well as deleting and moving, is move to the top. So I try and keep, when I'm using Google Classroom with students, what the important notices, which is usually the work I want the students to do. I try and keep those at the top of the feed. So if that was a really important post, move it back to the top. And so it moves that post back to the top so that students are going to see that when they load up. As much as all the feed is there, students' patience for scrolling down is very limited. So I try and keep front and center the important notices, the things I want them to do. So this is the stream page. And as I mentioned before, my classroom at the moment is set up so that students can also post in there. If you want to change that setting, up in settings here, we can go to settings, and in the general settings area, we can change it from students can post and comment to students can only comment, or all the way down to only teachers can post or comment. Now, there are times when I was teaching and I might have had it on only teachers can post or comment, and then that work feed, that stream page, becomes just really me as a teacher controlling exactly what the students are seeing on that page. But right now, as we're moving towards a period of distance learning, my recommendation for all teachers is to have it on students can post and comment. It means that students can come into that feed, they can ask a question, they can ask for clarification around a task, and we can just find out what they're thinking. It's just a space for them to make class-based comments. So my recommendation is for distance learning, leave the Google Classroom on students can post and comment. Now, what goes through your mind when people talk about that then is, well, okay, that's great, but what happens if someone in my classroom suddenly says something? So as a teacher, I still have teacher powers over my stream. I'm going to just change classes here and just change to my distance learning classroom because that has an example. So in this classroom, we've got some students in there, and this I've written welcome to my distance learning classroom, and this student's written hello back to me. Now, there's nothing particularly wrong with what that student's written, but if I was concerned about that, or maybe I've asked a question and they put the answers, and I don't want the answers revealing on the stream, I have some choices again through the dots at the end. So I can delete the post. So if some student writes something inappropriate or I don't want what they've written in my classroom, I can delete that post. And then I also have the power to mute the individual student. So I can mute this student here so that they can't post in my classroom anymore. So I might say to them, okay, I'm going to give you a warning, but next time round, that's it, you're muted. And then I might mute a student for a period of time. So even though my classroom here has got that power for students to comment on, I as a teacher can still go and alter those stream comments. So that's the stream page in Google Classroom. I'm just going to come back to my maths class through the side menu, back over to maths. So the next thing I might want to do is I might want to post some actual work for students to do, and that's the tab. So as a teacher, I have a tab called Classwork. And on the classwork page, I can post assignments and questions and activities for my students to do through the Create button. So I go to Create, and here's my choices. Assignment, which is probably the most popular when you first start using Google Classroom. I'd say the most popular thing is create an assignment. We'll dig into that in a minute. And then there's some other variations on that, such as quiz assignment. A question, we'll look at that later. Material and reuse post. Over time, once you've posted something in one Google Classroom, you can reuse it in any other Google Classroom that you're a teacher on. So over time, things naturally gravitate away from just posting assignments to saying, well, I've posted this before for my other Year 7 class, or I posted this last year, so I'm going to reuse that post into this classroom. So reuse post becomes a more popular button the more you use Google Classroom. But for now, I'm going to post a nice new assignment. So I've gone to create assignment. And the minimum I have to do on this page is give it a title. If I do nothing else, I have to give the assignment a title. So my title is Write a Story. And then I can put some further instructions in here. So open the slides and create your own story. Now, obviously, you can write as much detail as you think your students need in there to be able to complete the task. And you probably put a bit more text in there if you were doing your own assignment. But the minimum I needed was the title. Down below here, we've got a couple of buttons. The Add button allows me to add some resources to that assignment. So I could add, if there's a relevant YouTube video, if I wanted my class to maybe watch a video that talked about story writing, I could find that, add a YouTube video in. I might have a file that I've got on my computer that I want to upload for them to look at. I might have a link to a website. Maybe there's a really good website about story creation. I want to direct them off towards that resource. But I'd say the most popular button pressed down here is probably the Google Drive one. When I go to Google Drive, it shows me my different files and folders. I'm going to just grab these Google Slides for now and pop those into my classroom. When I grab something from Google Drive, initially it says students can view the file. So this option here means that the students could read that. If those were some slides that explain the task in more detail, or maybe I'd use them in class if we were back in school to explain the task, maybe that would be great for students can view file. Student can edit file is going to put all the students on one single document. It takes a bit of training with students to get them used to being all on the same document at once. So if you're new to Google Classroom and now you're doing distance learning, I wouldn't recommend that as your first choice. I would say the most popular button in Google Classroom is this bottom one, which is make a copy for each student. So make a copy for each student means that file is going to be duplicated. So it'll take my slides and it'll make a copy for each person in the class. So when they come into Google Classroom and they click the link, they're all working on their own version of the document. It's the same as a teacher, as me going to the photocopier, putting something through the photocopier 30 times, coming back into the classroom and handing it out. It's effectively performing that operation for me. So make a copy for each student is probably the most popular of the buttons. Sometimes I want to use that feature and I haven't even got the document yet. So we also have the create button, and that allows me to straight away create a blank Google Doc. So it goes and creates a blank document for me there. And here's the document, and it's already attached it to my Google Classroom. So if I come into Google Classroom and I hadn't prepared a document, I might say this is the story document. That's now attached to my thing down there, and the name will change in a moment. So I've got my document there, I've attached it so students can view that. I'm going to make a copy for each student on that one as well for them to write their answers into. I might change that one to view, so that's the instructions. So my assignment is now nicely set up for my students to get on with the work. Over on the right hand side here, remember all this stuff's optional, but you choose which you fill in. We've got maths class, so I can post it. It's going to my maths class right now. Admittedly, it's a story, which is a strange maths class task, but never mind. I can post to multiple classes at the same time. So if I also want my distance learning class to do this and some my IT class to do this, I can post this to multiple classrooms all in one go just by selecting the classes. So if you teach 2 classes, 3 classes all in the same syllabus, just do one assignment and fire it to all of them. Next to map the class, I've got all students, and here I can select the students. In my classroom here I've just created, I haven't actually added any students yet, but if I had added students, there would be the list of the names down there, and I could select or unselect students. That's really useful if you want to differentiate. So if you want to send some students to write a story, and other students who maybe have a writing frame, so they need a bit more support. So I'm going to add the writing frame on for different students. You could effectively do 2 assignments, and one to one students and one to the other, and then do it that way. So we could differentiate using that. But to be honest, most teachers, when they're writing an assignment, send it to the class they're currently in, to all the students. It's the most common. We then have this area which says points. So this is thinking about how do I want to grade this piece of work, if I even want to grade it. So I could go ungraded, so I'm not going to grade it at all, or I could. At the moment, I can put numbers in there, but in the settings in Google Classroom, you can put any sort of grade scheme you like. So if you want 1 to 9, if you want ABC, if you want pass, merit, distinction, if you want beginner, intermediate, mastery, it's entirely up to you to choose. You can create your own grade schemes, and then you can select them then from this area over here. So it's sort of your choice to decide on grade schemes for classroom. Or maybe yes, no, if it's a really simple piece of work. Has my student done the work? Yes or no? So I'll leave it on points for now. Due date. If I put a due date in, so I'm going to put a due date in of tomorrow and a timing of midnight. That sounds a bit evil, but we'll leave it. That means that it's going to create a calendar entry for my students to remind them tomorrow that the work's due in. So it'll go to Google Calendar and it'll put the deadline in their calendar to say that's when your write a story task for Mr. Caffrey is due in. So deadlines enable deadlines enable the assignment to go to calendar, But a deadline doesn't mean the student's cut off. They can still complete work after a deadline in Google Classroom. It will tell you it's been handed in late, but that's all it does. It doesn't cut the student off from the work in any way. Topics. My classroom at the moment is just one classroom, so I don't have any topics. You can create topics in Google Classroom, and over time that's useful if we're going to have a lot of work in Classroom, particularly popular at a primary school level, where they might have one Google Classroom for the class, and the topics might be literacy, numeracy, and so on to the different topics. So it enables the students or teachers to sort the work to see which work is literacy and which work is numeracy. So it just varies. Some teachers like topics, some teachers don't use them. It's your choice. But we can create topics there. We've then got two more advanced options, really. One is rubrics. Rubrics really is an American word, and we tend to, more often than not in the UK, call them level descriptors. So if when I'm marking this story, I've got some set level descriptors of what sort of story is maybe a level 1 story, what sort of story is a level 2 or a level 3 story, I can create the rubrics. I can create those level descriptors within Google Classroom. And then when I come back to mark the work, I can just select the appropriate band that work is. So there's a lot more advice on the Google for Education website in the Teacher Centre about rubrics, if you think that's useful to you and you want to dig into that in more detail. And then we have originality reports. So this is a new feature. When I tick it, it reminds me that originality reports on 3 assignments per class. Report means that it's going to check my students' work against the internet to find out if they cheated, because the student could do a Google search for story, paste the amazing story into the document and hand it back in again. Now, obviously, that's not their work. So originality reports would tell me what website they've copied that information from. So just as a check against the internet. Sometimes what you want to do if you're going to use originality reports is train the students to run the report on their work, because they can run it themselves before they hand the work in. And because that means they would then identify that they obviously can't copy and paste the story from the internet, and hopefully would change the story or rewrite it or just put it into their own words, or sometimes quote sources properly to enable them to put work in through Google Classroom. So originality reports is a new feature, only came out this year, just helps you check the originality of work coming in. Once I've done all that, and remember, the only thing that I had to do was the title, everything else was optional, I can then press assign. When I press assign, a few things are going to happen. Google's going to even say there's a new piece of work. It's called Write a Story. It's in Google Classroom. It's going to appear on the class feed, at the top of the feed, and any student's got the mobile app installed on their phone, it's going to ping their phone like a text message coming in, so they'll know there's a new assignment as well. And obviously, if I put a deadline, it's going to go into Google Calendar as well with the deadline. So lots of different ways the student's going to find out this work has been assigned. If you're staying up late at night for some strange reason and you're assigning this at 11 o'clock at night, and maybe you don't get to that time of night, next to assign, there's a little drop down and you can do a schedule. And schedule means I'd like this to go at some point in the future. Maybe tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I'd like this to be sent to my class at that point. So it doesn't have to go straight away. You can schedule it to go at some point in the future. But for now, I'm happy with that. I'll assign it out, and that then is sent to my class. And it will go out to my class, and that will enable the class to be able to see that. I can see it on the classwork page, but over on the stream, we've now got Andrew Caffrey posted a new assignment, write a story, at the top of the stream. So there it is in the stream now, and most student page, click on that and access the work in that way. So that's what it looks like when we assign a piece of work out to students. I suppose the next question is, what does it look like the other way around when they do some work? So I'm going to just change classrooms because I just created this class today. Go down to Egyptians, that's got some work in. And down here, I made an assignment. Here, I posted an assignment called Do Your Project. So I'm going to click on that. This is still a made-up classroom. It's got 3 students in it. Here are my 3 students. And what I can see here, I don't know if you can see this very clearly on the feed, is a little snapshot of each of their work. The minute you press assign, if you've done that, make a copy for each student, you can actually access the student's work. Even if they haven't handed it in, or maybe they haven't even started it, you can still click them and access their work. And this loads up the work. So what's loading up in the big grey area at the moment, in this middle area, is the student's work. I must have asked them to do a worksheet here. On the right-hand side here, we've got a little area which I, as a teacher, see, where if I want to, I can grade this work and do a comment for the teacher, for the students. At the top here, a few different options when we're looking at work through Google Classroom. The little drop-down box allows me to jump from student to student. So if I suddenly want to look at Lily's work, I can jump down there to look at Lily's work. And then the left and right arrow, student in turn. And the setup is to make it easy to look at students' work, see what they've done. If I need to score it, so I might change this score here to 100, because I must have put this one down as being graded out of 100. And if I want to leave a comment, I can leave a comment there as well. And just add that comment in and press post, so it goes back to my student. So I have the options in Google Classroom to look at the work, and if I want to use Classroom for it, to leave feedback on the work. And different teachers use this in different ways. Just a quick note about this return button at the top here. Students have an option when they do a piece of work in Google to press turn in or hand in. When they press that button, it takes them off the work, so they can no longer add to that work, and sends it over to you as a teacher for you to look at. This person's obviously done that because I've got the return button, which means if I press that, it will give them access to the work again. So some different teachers handle this in different ways. Some teachers say, never press the button, I'll leave some comments, you can improve your work. Other teachers like the idea of, okay, that student's finished that piece of work, so I'm now going to look at it and comment on it. It's your choice how you use those tools within Google Classroom. But just be aware that if you see the return highlighted like that, that means the student's handed in. So unless I return this back, this student can't do any more work on this. Whereas I think there's one of the students in this class who hasn't handed in. Maybe they all have now. I think they all have. So we can't see a return. If it's grayed out, it means they haven't handed in yet. So that's what it looks like from a teacher point of view when someone does some work and hands that work in. So let's go back to my classroom now. Back to my original class, my maths class, from the side menu. And just talk about a couple of other little features here. So we did a create assignment there. Create quiz assignment uses Google Forms. I'm not going to dig into Google Forms in this webinar, but that uses Google Forms and helps people. Google Forms can self-mark themselves. So we're doing some Google Forms webinars where we pick that up in a bit more detail. But that's what quiz assignment is. Question actually is quite a nice little tool to ask a quick question of my class. And right now, as we're thinking about distance learning, a lot of people ask quick check-in questions. So maybe they put a video in there, they put some work in there, and they want to know, are the students actually there? Are they responding to this? Are they reading that thing I put in there? Have they watched that video? So I might say to my class, how are you feeling today? As a quick sort of well-being check-in. And I might say to them, rather than short answer, I'll do multiple choice. And I might put some numbers in there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I might ask them to say where 10 is amazing. I might ask them now to rate how they're feeling. And it helps me as a teacher, particularly if it's a tutor group or a form group, from a sort of pastoral check-in point of view, to get a really quick sort of census of one, who's in my classroom, who's feeling great, who's not feeling great, maybe puts a lower score, and also who's not filled it in, who's not coming into Google Classroom and seeing that the question is there. With a question like that, I need to remember on the right-hand side to turn off students can see class summary. I don't want them seeing each other's answers or what the overall profile of grades is like. I'll turn that off. And then I can just press ask. And again, that question then goes out to my students. They get notification there's a question in Classroom over on the stream page. We've now got this how are you feeling today question. And if I tick that, I can see at the moment, no, obviously no one's answered that yet. But these numbers would show me how many people have answered for each number. And if I click a number, it would show me which individual students have put that number. So I can instantly get a sort of feeling, a gauge for how my students are getting on, how they're feeling, and what their well-being is like if I'm asking a question like that in my classroom. So that's just asking a quick question by going to classwork, create and question. Classwork creating material is really just a space to put other things. If you've got the syllabus or some slides that you just want students to have as a reference, really, resource, that's what create material is. It's just something that goes in the stream for students to look at. And obviously we mentioned reuse post earlier. So that's the classwork page. Now over to the grades page. Over to the people page first. So on the people page, we see who's in this classroom. So we see all the teachers, just me so far, all the students, no one at this point. I could add more teachers with the plus button and invite them along, pop their email address in and invite them in. Some people will have their head of department in the classroom. I used to have my teacher taught the same subject as me, so I would get them to add me to their classroom, because if you're in another teacher's classroom, you can use reuse post. So if they've got a really good assignment, I could reuse that into my classroom. The downside of being a co-teacher, i.e. on someone else's classroom, is you're going to get the notifications or the emails, whatever the alerts are from that classroom. So you have to bear that in mind. There's advantages to that in terms of sharing workload and disadvantages in terms of the notifications. For students, I suppose the two different ways of getting students in. One way, we could press the plus button, pop their email addresses in. And right now, in a remote sense, if you're suddenly faced with using Google Classroom, it's unlikely that the students are in front of you right now. So you might have to go for the email route. But the more normal way, when students are around in school, over on the stream page, is to share this code with students. When you click the little display button, it shows the code nice and big. And that code would allow people to join this classroom. So with that code, they could join the classroom, and their students would be then automatically enrolled as a student in the classroom. So the student would go to Google Classroom, press the plus button, and the other choice in that menu was join class, punch the code in. So that is the way you might get students in, but in distance learning sense, where you might have the option to do that, unless you might just do plus and type their email addresses in once. Once they're in a classroom, they're in forever until you do something with that classroom. So you never have to go through this process more than once. Finally, the grades page. On the grades page, nothing happening in this classroom yet, so I'll jump back to my Egyptians classroom. On the grades page, we can see what's going on in terms of grades with my students. So here's all my students on the left-hand side. Here's all the grades I may have given for a project or a piece of work. And as work comes in, just like a mark book would look, it's all in there as their grades. You can grade directly onto this page, so I can change grades directly on that page. And also, if I click any particular student, so I've clicked Lily here, it takes me into her page and shows me all the work that individual student's done. A bit like looking at that, I can look at that, and really helpfully at the top here, there's a little button where I can email the student, or sometimes if their parents' email addresses are in Google Classroom, I can contact parents as well. So a real nice way of just a workflow for looking at different students' work. And that takes us through the four main areas here within Google Classroom in terms of assigning things to classes. A couple of other things to mention. Over on the classes page here, you see all your Google Classrooms. So there they all are, my current classrooms. They might reach a point at the end of the year where you finish teaching a class before next September. So you'd hit the three little dots, and you have some choices there. And one of those choices is archive. Archive means it just puts that classroom into an archive space. And that means students don't end up with hundreds of classrooms for them to look at. They only see the ones that are live and current. So if you've finished a class, you're not teaching it next September, archive it out. The other really useful button on this page is copy. Copy makes a copy of a classroom. And a copy means that all of the assignments go back into draft. So if I'm teaching the same course over and over and over again, I might as well just copy the classroom and then start with the first assignment, send it out, second assignment, send it out, and so on. So copy can be useful. That's a quick guided tour of Google Classroom. If you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat on the right-hand side. I'm going to go to questions in just a second. I want to mention a couple of other resources that exist to support teachers who are new to Classroom. Over on the Google for Education Teacher Centre, there is a resource called First Day of Classroom. And so First Day of Classroom helps you to get started with Google Classroom. And there's some written step-by-step instructions. So if you're new to Classroom and you want to go through that, First Day of Classroom is your place. Secondly, we've got some free courses. So we are in partnership with ASA, and we've built some free work-through courses, getting started with Google Classroom, which is our beginner course, and our intermediate Google Classroom course. And they're both available online for people to do for free at edtechteam.online/ASA. So I hope that's been useful in terms of taking you through a quick, in half an hour, a guided tour of what Google Classroom looks like. If anyone's got any questions, I'm going to stay around for the next sort of 3 or 4 minutes to answer any of those. Feel free to pop them in the stream. But otherwise, thank you for watching. And if there's anything any more you need, you can join us on the other webinars. Each day at 3:30, it's a different webinar and a different topic. Tomorrow, we're looking at feedback. So the different ways we can provide feedback on students' work through Google. So when that work starts coming in, how do you process that? And then on Friday this week, as a geography teacher, one of my favorite days of the week, we're going to be looking at Google Earth and the geo tools that are available within Google and G Suite for Education. But otherwise, thank you for watching. Any questions, I'll hang around for the next couple of minutes to answer in the chat feed. But otherwise, see some of you all tomorrow and Friday.